All right, Bob, what's up?
Hey, man.
Episode 2.
Episode 2.
Episode 2.
Subject Matter X, a weekly podcast series powered by ContentPair, where we talk to subject matter experts, dive into how they get to where they are in their fields, and talk to them a little bit about what they're experts in. So today we are talking to Dr. Alexander Stankiewicz. He is a Ph.D. in neurobiology and anatomy. He's the co-founder of a sleep technology company called Clock Coach, and he's an expert in the circadian rhythm. He's the first to document how it impacts the creation of new cells in your brain.
So I know you're probably all listening. You're saying, well, what are you guys going to dive into today? Well, Bob and I are talking to Alex about the importance of a balanced circadian rhythm for your overall health, what things affect it, like food, light, sound, your schedule, how much or how little you exercise, and then how you can pay attention to your body and improve your own circadian rhythm. And this podcast is brought to you by ContentPair. So what we do at ContentPair is we match brands with subject matter experts, brands that need content and subject matter experts that want to share their knowledge and get their brand name out there by being published by larger, bigger brands. So if you are a business that produces content and want to be matched with somebody, or you consider yourself an expert and want to get your name and brand and knowledge out there, head over to ContentPair.com and sign up.
So without any further ado, let's bring Alex onto the podcast.
Alex, what's up?
Hey, how's it going, Todd?
Good. How are you?
Good.
So we have Alex Stankiewicz on the show today.
Hey, Alex.
How's it going, Bob?
Really, really happy to have you here. Super psyched to talk to you about science of sleep, circadian rhythms.
How'd you sleep last night?
I slept very well, actually.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Nice.
Nice and cool in these hot, humid conditions of Boston right now.
I know, it's brutal.
Yeah.
It is toasty. So we're thrilled. We're thrilled to get this episode started. So here's what we know about you first. So you did your undergraduate at BU in psychology and philosophy, correct?
Yeah.
And then you did your doctorate work also at BU in neurobiology and anatomy.
Mm-hmm.
Do you like being called doctor?
I only am called by doctor.
Oh, okay. Dr. Stankiewicz. There we go.
I have a Russian boss too, so now so I've been known as like Stankiewicz, the American, but I sometimes call myself Stankiewicz. Dr. Stankiewicz.
Stankiewicz.
That's how you're supposed to pronounce it. Yeah.
Get out. Really?
Yeah,
Dr.
yeah.
Stankiewicz.
Polish way, yeah.
You know what? From now on, that's it.
Yeah.
Now that you've told me.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Stankiewicz.
Mm-hmm.
You're a big Sox fan?
I am.
How big?
I camped out for Red Sox World Series tickets one time.
Oh, nice. Yeah. What year?
2011.
And then you were the first to document the daily rhythm with adult neurogenesis?
That's correct.
All right, so what is that? Can you tell us a little bit about adult neurogenesis?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to just dive right in.
Yeah.
Okay. So the notion that we were born with all the cells that we'll ever have was a statement made by Nobel laureate Ramon Cajal in 1928.
Okay.
And he said that everything in our brains are fixed and immutable, and there can be no regeneration. And it wasn't until 1965 with the advancement of techniques from Altman and Doss where they showed that there are numerous undifferentiated cells still in our adult brain. So this idea, and we now know that there are two regions of the adult mammalian brain. It's the subventricular zone and the subgranular zone of the hippocampal dentate gyrus.
Okay, so pretend I'm a total idiot.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Because I am an idiot, so please tell me.
So it means that there are two zones in the mammalian brain that currently grow cells when you're adults.
Okay.
And that's a groundbreaking discovery because it now led to the hope that we would be able to treat possibly or explain brain aging, help treatment of neurodegenerative disorders such as Alzheimer's or Parkinson's, or help people with brain injuries like stroke or trauma, possibly regrow new cells.
Interesting.
So that's the idea.
Okay. Got it. All right. So we will dive deep into that later on. But I really want to know, because you are an expert in circadian rhythms, how'd you get to this point in life? Like, take me through that whole story.
Well, I enrolled at Boston University undecided. I didn't know what I wanted to study. I took classes that fascinated me. Those happened to be in the area of psychology and philosophy. At BU, I tried to expose myself as much as I could. I got involved with psychology research, but I realized I wanted to understand the molecular mechanisms behind behaviors. So I started volunteering in a neuroscience lab, again at Boston University. And I eventually started my PhD in a lab after I graduated.
So take me through that a little bit. You're studying psychology and you're like, hey, I understand from a conceptual level why people do what they do. But you said, okay, no, I want to go deeper into this. I want to understand molecular, subatomic level. What is that?
yeah, the molecular, like molecularly. I mean, a lot of psychology research is survey responses or seeing different maybe behaviors. But in order to understand those behaviors or what's actually going on, you have to know what's going on cellularly and molecularly to be able to maybe predict those behaviors or to better understand how to help those people as well.
So for that research, you're trusting people in their survey responses, so that's naturally fallible.
Yeah.
So you're like, no, I can do better. I can
We
get
can do
deeper
better.
and get
Exactly.
better answers. Okay,
Yeah.
I like that.
I like that. That's
I like
really
that.
interesting.
Yeah.
All right. So then from psychology, you started diving into this more advanced research. You were volunteering in a lab.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of work were you doing in that lab?
Started learning about the model organism that we use in our lab, which was zebrafish. And I started working in a sleep and circadian physiology lab. So I got a better understanding of what circadian actually meant and why it's so important and ever present throughout our society, from humans and all the way down to one cell cyanobacteria.
So let's start like at a very, very high level. Can you just briefly explain kind of to Bob and I here, like what is the importance of someone's circadian rhythm? Like why do we have it in our bodies?
So let me first discuss what actually circadian means. Circa dia, so that's Latin for about a day. So we evolved with the 24-hour light-dark cycle, which is the time it takes the Earth to rotate on its axis. And all of these living things have 24-hour circadian rhythms. And that's from one cell cyanobacteria to each and every one of our cells in our human body. There is so much about sleep that scientists still don't know about, but they all agree that sleep is essential for survival. Animals will die of sleep deprivation before starvation. So it's that important. It evolutionarily doesn't make sense to sleep, to remain in a state of unconsciousness where we can't eat, mate, or protect ourselves from predators. Yet this is a conserved process shared among species greater than 600 million years old. And it's essential for all vertebrates, humans, monkeys, birds, rats, zebrafish. And we spend a third of our life sleeping as well. So when we were 30 years old, you'll spend 10 years asleep. So sleep loss, circadian misalignment, is associated short-term, we know, with poor concentration, fatigue, mood swings, decrease in sport performance. Long-term, it's associated with depression, ADHD, obesity, cancer, Alzheimer's disease.
Let's dive into that a little bit further. So there's no one magic bullet or magic pill that's going to fix sleep for everybody, right? What does that look like? How do people figure out what's going to work for them?
It's just about listening to your bodies. Besides going into a sleep study, a well-controlled sleep study at a university or a hospital or something, it's about just understanding what's good for you. So like I guess I was saying, with these circadian clocks all ticking, these circadian clocks all organize and make what is known as circadian rhythms. So the most well-known one is our sleep-wake cycle. We also have a metabolic cycle, hormonal cycle, cognitive mood, health, physical strength, immune response, and all these have a period of about 24 hours. And so it's about optimally aligning them so the timing makes sense within our bodies, such that you're not waking up in the middle of the night to eat. And that's the problem that is experienced when you have jet lag or you have shift work. You have to be awake for several hours during the night for shift work. So that means you're naturally going to get hungry, but your body is not at that time ready to digest food because you're supposed to be sleeping. So it's forcing something that's not right into your body, and that in itself is unhealthy.
So there's no one right way to look at this, but you do want to gain some kind of understanding about this. And that's why you're doing the research. And so you guys have chosen, well, not you specifically, but the industry at large, or the field at large, has chosen zebrafish as the animal that is the model for this. Why is that versus like a mouse or a rat or something?
So this wasn't always the case. A lot of people still study mostly mice and rats for all research. They're well documented. They do a lot of genetic manipulations with them. But our idea within our lab is that we were always interested in studying diurnal model, which is what humans are, whereas mice and rats are nocturnal models.
So when you say diurnal, you mean awake during the day, asleep at night, versus nocturnal, which is the inverse of that.
Mm-hmm. So nocturnal, and it's a little bit more complex than that too. Nocturnal rodents sleep during the day, while diurnal humans sleep at night. And however, we all share in both diurnal and nocturnal species a daily pattern of core clock genes, so that 24-hour timing system. Nighttime melatonin secretion is conserved. Peak neuronal activity in our central pacemaker, our central control system of our brain, is also conserved. However, these clock genes, when you look at them, they're the downstream processes they control, which is the sleep-wake cycle, which is feeding, which is activity. They're on a 12-hour difference between nocturnal and diurnal animals. One's active during the day, one's sleeping during the day.
So to understand it better, you just want to use an animal that follows that same model for us.
Correct.
I have a really hard time wrapping my head around how in the world do you study something that is so small? Like a zebrafish, how do you go about studying their sleep cycles? How do you go about studying their circadian rhythms? Where does it begin? Where does it end?
Well, the beautiful thing about having a lot of these animals is that we're able to have a high data set from several creatures for different time points, especially when you're doing circadian research. Most of my experiments occur over a 24-hour period. So I'm taking data points every 4 hours or every 2 hours over 24 hours. And if I was using larger animals, I wouldn't be able to do so.
So you're sacrificing your own circadian rhythm to go take these measurements over the course of a 24-hour period to better understand how it kind of all plays in the larger picture.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
Dedication for the research.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So the zebrafish, besides just being diurnal, they present. So the type of research that I was interested in was the circadian regulation of adult neurogenesis. So over the course of a day, how many new cells are born in the adult brain? And so these zebrafish, they possess a large neurogenic capacity in that they produce lots of different cells in 16 neurogenic niches, where I said in mammals, there's only 2 neurogenic niches. So in addition, they're prolific breeders, easy maintenance, rapidly develop. Within 5 days, they're feeding. Within 3 months, they're breeding. And they have a robust central and peripheral oscillators, and that's those circadian oscillators set.
And so with this research, you said you've been digging into things like how shift work and building in these unhealthy habits and unnaturally altering your sleep cycle can have a negative impact on your sleep. What else are you able to dig into as a result of this?
One of the things too that we experiment with different lighting conditions, timing. My first paper that I published said that there is a daily cycle, a circadian cycle, something intrinsic of cell cycle over the course of a day. So that if you think back to your high school biology days, the cell's DNA replicates in the evening time, and they undergo the process of mitosis, which is cell separation in the morning. So that it's important to understand this because the timing of specific interventions for, say, cancer therapy, which you'd want to decrease neurogenesis, or either enhance neurogenesis in brain trauma or neurodegenerative patients, can be enhanced or decreased depending on maybe the specific timing of a treatment or something.
So you briefly mentioned light,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to talk a little bit about things that affect someone's circadian rhythm.
Mm-hmm.
Let's first dive into light. It seems like there's some sort of correlation, causation. How does light affect this?
So light is one of the most important circadian regulators. So if we think about circadian rhythms like a symphony, so each one of our systems, we have the drums, which could be a specific organ, is our gut health. We have the cello, which is our heart. We have these different instruments playing for different body parts. So this central pacemaker in light regulates the timing and tells when all these instruments should play.
So I have this app on my computer that it strips out the blue light.
Mm-hmm.
Does that actually work?
Yes, blue light is one of the most significant decreasers of melatonin. However, all light, whether it's blue, red, green.
Okay, so just because I'm using that app doesn't actually mean I'm going to go sleep better when I stop using my laptop at 2:00 in the morning.
No.
Okay.
But it seems like it can help.
That's correct.
So
Mm-hmm. It's about being conscientious about the amount of light intake. So
Okay.
all these processes, these are intrinsic and endogenous. So they'll happen on a 24-hour schedule, which is circadian, without us knowing. So if we were put into a cave, we would still have this same 24-hour schedule, and we would eat at the same times, we would drink at the same times, and we go to sleep at the same time. And this is what's called free running rhythms. And that's what that means is each day you'd wait, either depending on your chronotype, which is whether you have usually a longer circadian clock or a shorter circadian clock, greater than 24 hours or less than 24 hours. So if you have a greater circadian clock, you'd start waking up later and later each day. The one that is less than 24 hours is known as the lark, and the one that is greater is known as the night owl.
So like morning person
Versus evening
would be the lark.
is a lark.
Okay.
Correct. Yep.
I've heard somebody call somebody a lark once.
I feel like that might be an insult.
But
Like
I wonder if
that old
there
Monty
was-
Python skit, like, I bite my thumb at you, sir.
Have you ever been called a lark?
I sure haven't.
Okay, so light affects it. How does food?
Food is also a circadian Zeitgeber, which is German for time giver, which is what we use in our
Say that word again.
Zeitgeber.
Zeitgeber.
It's something that we use as anything that can reset these intrinsic circadian rhythms. So if you start eating at different times of day, it can change the alignment of your body's clocks.
But there is an impact of things like caloric intake.
Mm-hmm.
And you've written about this in one of your papers.
Yeah, in one of my most recent papers, I established zebrafish actually as a model for diet-induced premature aging. So we all know that high caloric intake is not good for us, whether eating too much or eating in excess of high caloric foods. This high caloric diet can alter our liver metabolism, cholesterol, increase our chances of diabetes, decrease lifespan. And the only thing that's known to increase lifespan naturally is caloric restriction. So caloric restriction has been shown to decrease aging, increase lifespan, counteract related diseases. But these were all shown in nocturnal species. So it's about establishing, again, a diurnal model for conducting research.
So if I eat a lot pretty consistently, there's a pretty good chance that I'm going to live a shorter amount of time. But then if I start eating less, then I mean, I know it's not a direct correlation or like a 1-to-1 correlation, but there's a pretty good chance that I might live a little longer.
Yeah.
All right. So
Yes,
I got to start.
diet is important.
I got to start doing that.
So they're not lying when they say diet is important. They're not kidding.
And what about varying your schedule from the weekdays to the weekend? What kind of impact does that have on your sleep and your overall health?
Mm-hmm. So either when we travel to different time zones, in a phenomenon known as jet lag, or when we change our schedules on the weekends, we start going to bed later, getting up earlier. That's a process known as social jet lag. And it's, as you know, it's more difficult getting up on Monday morning, or it's more difficult adjusting to that time zone. And what happens there is that our internal body clocks are not in line with our environment. And as I said before, all of these peripheral tissues, our heart, our lungs, our kidneys, and all these different circadian rhythms are not in alignment with our environment.
How much variance can your body take? Like if I wake up on set at 7:30 during the week, but then I wake up at 8 o'clock on the weekends, is that really going to mess me up, or does it have to be
No,
a
that should
longer
be good.
span
It
of
should
time?
be, yeah, it'll be a couple hours.
A couple hours. Okay.
Do you know how many people are technically sleep deprived?
Currently, there's a sleep epidemic in the U.S. And the Centers for Disease Control, the CDC, wrote in 2016 that sleep loss has become a national epidemic, infecting 1 in 3 American adults. And this study does not include children under the age of 18.
1 in 3.
Yes.
1 in 3.
So at this table, that one is me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, Bob. Sleep deprived.
And
okay.
this sleep deprivation by RAND Corporation has noted that the annual loss of productivity in the United States due to poor sleep is over $411 billion.
What?
So
That's
it's a
incredible.
large problem, and it's growing the more that our work days are lengthened, the world becomes more globalized, and we continue to stay up later.
So that's really fascinating. So what can an organization do to encourage its employees to get more sleep, better sleep, so that they're more productive? And I would assume happier with their job. They're not losing money for the company. How can they do that?
One is sleep education, understanding the importance for sleep and circadian timing. And we've actually started a company called Clock Coach, along with Irina Zhdanova, who is a sleep expert in sleep medicine and circadian physiology, who completed her training at MIT and was a professor at anatomy and neurobiology at BU School of Medicine before we started this company together. And the answer, there is no magic sleeping pill or help for overcoming jet lag. It's about, as I said, you try to align your circadian rhythms, which include sleep, to optimize your cognitive and physical performance and best understanding what's specific for you. So having set times where workers have to be in the office is not a modern take on understanding what's best for an individual. So as I said before, some people are, in the most basic sense, are morning larks or evening night owls. So it's about understanding what their schedules can dictate
So
to get the best performance.
As simple as varying somebody's workday based on you said it's called a chronotype.
Yep.
Could have a massive impact on their productive output.
Yes.
So, like, I can see that kind of being hard, where a company may have the typical 9 to 5 schedule where they expect everybody to be in at 9 and leave at 5. What advice do you say to a company that says, okay, great, like we totally understand that people have their own schedules and their own rhythms. How do we implement this into a company?
Or even maybe just for the individual who's like, I have some flexibility from my employer to, kind of work how I want to work. What can I start building into my day to make sure that I'm more productive and overall a happier individual?
A regular nightly routine and sleep hygiene makes a difference.
What is sleep hygiene? What do you mean?
Putting yourself in, getting a right routine that helps you prepare your body to go to sleep at night. Whether it's taking a warm shower or bath, reading a book, light stretches, avoiding caffeine in the evening, maintaining a cold, dark, quiet room for bedtime and sleep, establishing a relaxing bedtime routine, avoiding bright light before bedtime, maintaining consistent sleep-wake cycles.
What are your sleeping habits? Do you have any routines that you do before going to bed to help keep your clock in sync?
I do not have bright light on my phones, the main one is I dim the lights in the bathroom when I'm brushing my teeth. So you don't want the light from the bathroom can actually decrease and hurt that melatonin production that's so important for putting you to sleep. So decreasing the light in there when you're doing that. Or if you happen to get up to go to the bathroom or you need a glass of water at night, is to maintain dim light. So it's not resetting your clocks.
So you mentioned before that you co-founded this company called Clock Coach. Your co-founders, Irina and Andy. What are you guys trying to do at Clock Coach? Tell me a little bit about kind of the model or the approach that the company takes to helping people with their sleep.
Mm-hmm. So it's sleep, jet lag, and circadian alignment. So our company is trying to align all these unique circadian rhythms that we have in your body and optimize an ideal schedule specific for you that will allow you to have the greatest cognitive and physical performance specifically for you. So external factors such as stress, food, drugs, light, temperature can shift your circadian rhythms, affecting your sleep-wake cycles. So if applied properly at the optimal time, we can use these same cues to help realign your natural rhythms. So we'll be gathering information from your smartphone or wearable devices, recording activity levels, getting user feedback, how you feel throughout the day, and delivering with our algorithm an output schedule that helps you align and optimize your circadian rhythms. So these will be light, feeding, time to eat, time to sleep, and times of exercise. And all these conditions will help you overcome jet lag primarily, which is what we're looking at now, to help people and business travelers who have the best possible alignment to their new environment, to help them with business meetings or athletes looking to overcome jet lag. Population-based studies in flight attendants and flight crews have found that these individuals have higher rates of breast cancer, melanoma, and prostate cancer than general populations of adults.
You travel a lot.
Yeah, I do.
How much of this do you notice?
Oh my God, a lot. It's very, very noticeable. Some trips more than others. Like I notice when I go from the East Coast to the West Coast, it's a lot easier for me to start my day, because 9 a.m. here in Boston, 6 a.m. in Los Angeles. So I'm naturally waking up at an earlier point in the morning. I feel like 10 times more productive for those first few days until my body kind of adjusts. And then when I come back, I'm naturally a night owl. So it's actually not as bad for me to readjust into a schedule. But I have noticed, going across oceans every once in a while has a really, really big impact. I've tried to find ways to mitigate that. Right before we started recording, I was talking to Alex about this. I went to Africa a few years ago, and I tried to sleep for the time zone that I was going into, to just try to short circuit my body to know, like, hey, this is when you need to be sleeping for where I was going to. And it worked going, but it didn't help me. When I came back, I slept for like a day. But yeah, it's very, very noticeable.
I don't travel that much, so I don't notice it a whole lot. But what I do notice is that environment can really mess me up. Hotels specifically.
Mm-hmm.
I can't sleep.
I get the best night's sleep of my life when I'm in hotels. It's crazy.
Usually the first night of sleep in a hotel, you're not sleeping as well. And the second night of sleep, you sleep better. So in new environments, your first night is never as good as your second night because you are unaware of your surroundings and you don't feel comfortable in those.
So one other thing that you mentioned before that has an impact, or you mentioned just in passing, is exercise. We haven't really discussed this at all yet, but amount of physical activity, time of day to exercise. You mentioned that you guys are making recommendations for exercise with Clock Coach, but what kind of impact will that have as you kind of insert it into your schedule? Or again, is that something that's different for everybody?
So there are three pillars of health, which is diet and exercise. And the one that we know the least about is sleep. And that's people are relying on that and seeing the importance of sleep and circadian alignment more so now. And that will be important for future athletes. And as I said, for business travelers and just everybody. Just having an aligned schedule helps your health.
So you can tell the Boston fan base to not freak out when they send David Price out about 3 days before one of his starts because they're just trying to get him on a routine.
That's correct. Yeah.
That's actually, I never noticed that before. That's really interesting.
But they do send their starters out before or late, or they go off to a totally new city.
Yeah.
And
so
because of that.
they're starting to understand the implications of sleep science. And that's the whole importance, is adjusting your schedule to a new time zone.
The future of studying circadian rhythms, where do you see it going? You mentioned that more people are putting a little more effort into actually understanding this. Where do you see it going?
The increase in technology, being able to understand what people are doing actively during the day with wearable devices, with our phones, being able to record activity, heart rate, different skin conductivity conditions, will better understand, and we'll be able to further elucidate what's our circadian rhythms are, I believe. Even with all this background noise in understanding it, that we'll be able to get a better idea, because now people are tracking all these different things. So you could have like large scale sleep studies or large scale experiments for people using placebos versus other drugs to help understand what's actually going on with the human physiology, or what's going on with sleep or eating, metabolism.
And as we mentioned before, since you'll be getting more precise data, you won't have to rely so much on people's like self-reporting and surveys and things like that.
Or going into a lab as well.
Yeah.
Just spending a few days or a week at a lab.
So it makes this data accessible at a much larger scale.
Mm-hmm.
All right. This has been incredible.
Absolutely incredible.
Alex, if people want to connect with you, learn more about what you do and what Clock Coach does, how can they find you on the internet?
You can find me on LinkedIn, or we also are available at clockcoach.com.
Okay.
Cool. So
Awesome.
we'll put all of that in the show notes. You know what I'm going to test tonight? Dimming the lights.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
like
I'll be outside your window with a flashlight, just shining it in, or a laser pointer.
You're going to ruin the whole thing. Awesome, Alex. Thank you.
Thank you, boys.
Thank you for listening. If you liked this episode with Alex, head on over to iTunes. We'd appreciate a rating and a review. If you'd like to connect with us on social media, we are at SMX Podcast on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. You can find us on the web at subjectmatterx.com, and you can subscribe to the podcast on your listening platform of choice. We are on iTunes, Google Play Music, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, SoundCloud, really like a lot of places.
Yeah. Covers the whole gamut.
Head on over, subscribe so that new episodes of Subject Matter X will come straight to the listening device of your choice.
And remember that Subject Matter X is always brought to you by ContentPair. If you are a brand and you want to produce content that is written or authored by a subject matter expert, or if you consider yourself an expert and you want to get your knowledge, brand name, you want to increase your reach, get published by a well-recognizable business blog, head over to ContentPair.com. Both of you can sign up and we will connect you with the right opportunity. So thanks for listening.
Awesome. We'll see you next week.